you're catching it later on down the stream through the YouTube or the archive. Either way, every single one of you listening is appreciated by me directly. Just wanted to say that. So, let's see. I do believe we'll have phones available for tonight's show. Just wanted to let you know that. And a couple other things I want to discuss before I get immediately to my guest. You know, interesting how things are timed. Last night, apparently, during my show, there was a bunch of problems with people being able to access the players through a whole lot of different methods. Not sure why, couldn't figure it out. I even muted my microphone and checked it while I was on the air to see if I had to report to the network that it wasn't working. And you know what? It was working for me. It worked through my website where I have an AFR player at Ochelli.com. There's a player there. There's players on a couple of other websites that I know about. And actually every other day I'm finding out that people are putting up players that directly stream the American Freedom Radio sound all over the place. So it seems to me as though it was all working, guys, but for some reason or other, some of you had trouble. So in that category today, of course, I get ready to do my usual social media blitz for each of my shows in the hour leading up to them. And one of the places I unfortunately have to go is to the fake book or the Facebook, whatever it is you want to call it, that thing which is a wonderful tool for intelligence collection on anybody who wants to volunteer for it, of course. But it is a nice tool for promotions as well to try and get the word out, so I still utilize it. Sort of holding my nose while I do. And, you know, I tried to get into the radio show group today, and I can't get into my own radio show group. And, in fact, couldn't even really navigate through Facebook for some reason. But I was able to go to my own page, but not into my own radio show group. So no idea what you guys are saying today or anything else because I can't get there. All right. Well, anyway. Hopefully, you've all realized that I'm still on 5 nights a week and just decided to tune in and see what happened. Anyway, as we go forward, my guest tonight is Jordan Maxwell. Now, probably I would say he needs no introduction, but hey, let's put it this way. There's lots of things that could be said about Jordan. There's lots of things that could be said about the work he does, the things he has said over the years, and I'm pretty proud that he has been a guest on my show before and has agreed to come on again tonight because I have a great appreciation for the things he says and how he puts together information. Most fascinating this week, I noticed a very, very nasty commentary being laid on me on my YouTube channel for the last show I did with Jordan, and I couldn't figure out why. Then I took a listen to the first 5 minutes, and I figured it out. See, when you have this terrible, ugly habit of not blaming the Jews for every single thing in the world that happens, and you don't want to point to it as a constant and say that they are literally the root of all evil, well, you apparently incite the very, very angry emotional backlash from certain members of the online community. So, sorry about that. Hopefully, Jordan didn't end up with any of that kind of feedback, but you know me, I'm the bad guy who doesn't want to point at the real enemy. But to me, it seems as though the real enemies are every single place and, you know, under every rock, up every tree, and seemingly embedded into every single system that has been erected around us to control and confound us. But maybe it's just my imagination and I'm one of those crazy conspiracy theorists. All right, enough out of my mouth. Jordan Maxwell, first of all, you have a show now on American Freedom Radio, and people have been asking what's going on with it, and I have no idea myself, but I wanted to hear from you what's happening because I think the last week or maybe 2 weeks there was a replay of it. Definitely I was looking forward to some more, but there's some changes and some things that maybe held you up, and I just wanted to kind of hear from you about that, Mr. Maxwell. And also, by the way, if this show incites anything other than extreme anger and upset at the fact that we didn't blame every single thing on the Jews during this discussion, you can find Jordan at jordanmaxwellshow.com. Go to jordanmaxwellshow.com, not the old website, which also seems to bear his name because it's no longer under his control and that's not his gig. JordanMaxwellShow.com is where you can actually keep up with Mr. Maxwell, and there's an interesting research group there as well, which I'm sure he'll fill us in on a little bit, and tell us some of the other wonderful features that are over at his website as the discussion goes further. But Mr. Maxwell, first of all, how you doing tonight?
Well, thank you, Chuck, for having me on. Yeah, I'm still here. At 75 years old, that's about all I can say. I'm here, and again, thank you for inviting me on the show.
Oh, my pleasure, definitely. So, first off, let's just get it out of the way about what's going on with the Jordan Maxwell Show on American Freedom Radio. You want to kind of fill people in as to what's happening and what's going to happen with it?
Yeah, I've been wanting to because the network and I and myself have been talking for quite a few years about me doing a show on the network, and I've really liked the network. I like the people on it, and I've wanted to do a show. But for the past 5 years, I've been cyber stalked by criminals who are trying to destroy my work and my name, and so it's really taken its toll on me because at my age, I'm having to fight in court and fight and struggle to stay alive. I never dreamed that my work would take me into such dark places in my life. And so, but that's what you have to put up with if you are doing something that's, that's angering certain segments in society that don't want to hear people talking about the things I talk about. And so, and of course, then I also have my website stolen, my original website, which was jordanmaxwell.com. I had that stolen from me by my webmaster who I trusted, and I gave him the codes to the website, and immediately he stole the website and my money and my products and copyrighted everything I've ever done, so he owns it, and tried to trademark my name in Washington, D.C. behind my back 3 times until I found out. And today owns and controls my website, where he prints out all kinds of dirty stuff and having attacks on my person and my family and my name. And so I'm trying to get rid of this criminal and put him in jail and get my website and my life back. But I've been the subject of attacks for so many years. I'm very tired of trying to stay alive in the face of so many people trying to destroy what I have wanted to do and what I've tried to do over the years. And basically that is, I just want to educate people, my fellow man, as to how this dirty system we live under actually, in fact, works. And there's a lot of people who have a lot invested in this system that don't want the general population of this country awakening to how this operation actually works. And so you've heard me say it before, I'll say it again, that knowledge is power. And without knowledge, you really don't have any power. You can argue and complain and cry about the conditions and hope and pray that the next leader that comes in will change the world for us and make it better. But that's just wishful thinking. It's not going to happen. And once you understand how this country today operates, where it came from since 1770s, how it started, as opposed to where it evolved into and mutated into, as opposed to where it is now, finally today. Once you really understand how the system that we live under really actually in fact works, you will find, as I have and others like me, that nothing in this world works the way you think it does. And I've said that so many times. Especially is it true in America. Nothing in America today works the way you think it does. Banks don't do what you think they do. Police departments aren't there to do what you think they are. Insurance companies are not doing what you think they're doing. Educational institutions, colleges, universities, schools, are not there to do what you think they are. So once you finally, get that into your mind, that nothing in this country works the way you think it does. And finally, you begin to see how this system actually, really, in fact, works. It will be so startling and so profoundly effective of the way you view life and the way you view yourself and your country and the world you live in. It will be an extraordinary awakening when you finally see it. And, Hollywood's been telling us this in movies for years. I remember going back as far back as, what was it? What was the movie? It's a long time ago. Oh, Wizard of Oz. The Wizard of Oz. And remember, they're going down the yellow brick road. Well, that's what we've been doing. We're going down the yellow brick road, which is gold. It's in bricks. And you weigh gold. The way it is bought and sold is by the ounce. And the abbreviation for ounce internationally in banking is OZ. And so what we're talking about, the Wizard of Oz, is the Wizard of Ounces on the golden brick road. And so then you find out that the movie from MGM many years ago, the Wizard of Oz, is actually telling you an impressive story about how America works and how the world around you actually works. And so you have the characters, the girl who is an innocent young girl. That's America. America's innocent and young, doesn't know, doesn't understand. And so she discovers that she's no longer in Kansas anymore. Well, that's explaining to you that, wake up, grow up. You're no longer in the dream world of America, land of the free and home of the brave, and we're holy people, and the Lord has blessed us and all that. No, there's a big tornado comes and just destroys your foundation and destroys your whole house. Your house of cards is destroyed. And then you discover you're no longer in America. You're no longer in the world you thought you were. And then you have her companions, the lion who was frightened to death of everything. Well, that's us. We pound our chest like gorillas, like we are, we're the land of the free and home of the brave. But actually, in point of fact, we're like the lion and the Wizard of Oz. We're frightened to death of everything. And we should be, because everything around us in our country is frightening. And then, of course, you have the Tin Man. He's running around with a hatchet. And of course, the Tin Man is the tax identification number. They made songs about this, about the tax identification number, or Tin Man. And, and the little dog follows the girl. And so what I'm saying is that Hollywood has been telling us all kinds of interesting stories. And we humans, because we're young and innocent and childlike, we don't understand the dark, pornographic truths that Hollywood has been, feeding us for years. We don't really see it. And that's in keeping, and that's in keeping with what the Bible says. I think it has Jesus saying, you look with your eyes, but you do not see. And you listen with your ears, but you do not hear. And with your heart, you don't get the sense of it. And that's true. I mean, Americans have been looking at all the crap going on in our country, from day one. We look at it, we don't understand it. All we know is just pay your bills and buy some beer and watch a ball game, and that's all you know, and that's all you're supposed to know. Because this kind of knowledge I talk about, the reason why I have so much animosity pointed to me and so many attacks on my person and my name and my work, is because this kind of knowledge is on a need-to-know basis, and the American public are not supposed to know. They don't need to know. All they need to do is do what they're told to do, and go to church and pay your taxes and do your job and keep out of the way and shut up. You got nothing to say about nothing.
Right, and get told what to do some more when you go to the churches. Of course, I think it's the Tin Man who doesn't have a heart, right? The Straw Man doesn't have a brain. I mean, really, the Wizard of Oz makes a lot of sense when you start to break down a whole lot of things, even the flying monkeys.
That's it. Right.
But the truth is that despite the fact that was a revolutionary sort of allegory that was given out there, and very, very much truthful when one breaks it down. We were still stuck with many years later in the 1960s, guys like Rod Serling, who I've got to tell you also disseminated a lot of truth in my estimation. I still feel like the character in the one episode of The Twilight Zone running around trying to explain to people that it's a cookbook. This is beyond the pale when it comes to the signals that could have been picked up on one way or another. I mean, and there's something to be said for the fact that Hollywood, much like everything else, has become extremely corrupted. And, they took Dorothy on a strange trip, that's for sure. But nowadays, if we were to speak about it realistically, I mean, they would have had to have kidnapped her, tortured her, sleep-deprived her, and probably sexually assaulted her systematically in order to get the real story about what's actually gone on, if we're considering that Dorothy represents America in the allegory. That's truthfully what I think has happened to this country and to the world as a result. Literally, I mean, I'm fond of saying something slightly different from what you say, and I didn't steal it from you directly, but it does sound awfully familiar. I'll tell you constantly that guess what? Nothing in this world that is in fact labeled is labeled correctly. Every single thing that you see is apparently labeled for the purposes of deception. That is the reality. So your labels that people are utilizing to figure out which thing they should take down off of the shelf to add to their cooking recipes, in fact, they have no concept of whether they're poisonous. The things that you buy in the store, you're buying things under a false under a false assumption, under a false presentation. The whole thing is a massive shell game, and it's constant. That which they tell you is news is not news. Every single thing that they explain to you as food is practically not food. The vaccines which are meant to prevent diseases create them. The churches that are meant to be, producers of great moral character are really destroyers of them in my estimation. Especially the larger the church, the more depraved it becomes. The political leaders are not leading anyone, and those that are meant to represent you don't actually represent you. I mean, we can go on and on and on. The entire world, right? In fact, is a shadow game, except the shadows being projected don't even begin to represent the real physical objects any longer. And it didn't get this way by accident. This is not, just the ignorance of man that everything is mislabeled. No. And the attacks on you, the reason why you're so dangerous, and I'll stop after I say this. The reason why you're so dangerous is this. See, I'm again happy to call myself a thought criminal, right? Because I am. I think in a criminal way when you consider the context of the world around us. I actually want people to make their own decisions based on being informed, et cetera, et cetera. Okay? But, see, the thing is, I'm like a thought criminal, and the reason why your entire ideology and even your name and everything else needs to be hijacked, there was no way that wasn't going to happen to you personally. Because, in a way, if I'm a thought criminal, you're a thought terrorist. Because you're actually you have actually given people a complete program to understand the entire deception. I do it piece by piece, but I mean the collection of your work over the years could be seen as an almost anti-dogma. The deprogramming in reality, or the anti-dogma, becomes extremely dangerous to those that are so entrenched in the system that they cannot see beyond it to begin with. So it is still startling. Even for those that sometimes we feel like we're preaching to the choir, there are some very basic misconceptions that seemingly they will not let go of. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
It's like the very last things, even those that seem to be in a revolutionary state of mind, that seem to be ahead of the curve, that seem to be not being deceived directly and constantly, even they have these misconceptions that they grip onto for dear life, because to truly abandon all of those labels, to truly abandon all of those prejudices, because they are judgments without ever actually having dealt with something. It is to prejudge. A prejudice is that. So all of those prejudices, without abandoning all of your prejudices first, it's rather difficult to even begin to deprogram and to answer this great shell game and actually be able to call it out. Listen, I know the ball is under that shell because I know how this game is played. I don't know what you have to say about that, but that's what it seems to me is still the battle, and that's why we're still talking about a lot of the very same things that we always have, because there are so many that, despite the fact that they understand they're being played, they still won't let go of the idea that the game is, most certainly rigged on all levels. They still have this mad, insane concept that there is a possibility that they might actually buy the winning lottery ticket one day.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I don't know how you see that, but that's how I see it.
Well, the lottery ticket actually goes back to Al Capone in Chicago and the mob. They used to call it the numbers game. So for all young people who think the lottery is a great idea and a fun thing to do, go back on the web to YouTube and type in the numbers game. And it would take you back to the 30s and 40s in America with the mafia, the Cosa Nostra, and the Chicago and the New York gangs. And they had a way of making a lot of money. The mob did. They called it the numbers game. And so the numbers game made Al Capone and all of the mafia families in America billions of dollars over the years. And so today, since our government now is like the mafia, they've adopted the mafia's way of making money. And so one of them is called the lottery. No, it's not the lottery. It's the old numbers game that the mafia was into years ago, and probably today runs the numbers game for the government, because they know what they're doing. They were doing it back in the 30s. So, and you're right. So much, that is happening to us. We think it's all new. It's only the old guys who've been around for 75 years and seen it all and heard it all. They know what the trick is. They've seen the trick pulled before. They've heard the stories before. It's old hat to them. That's why when you think you're pulling something when you're a kid, I know because I did it. You think you're doing something your parents are not aware of, and you think you're pulling some kind of a fast deal. But the old people, the old guys, my grandfather, he would tell me, "Yeah, I know, kid. I know what you're doing. I know what you think you're doing, but I was doing that too, 50 years before you were born. So I know what you're doing. So don't pull that on me. You pull it on your other kids around you because they don't know. But don't pull that stuff around me, because I know what you're doing. I know who you are." And so that's why older people like myself who are speaking out, as long as you keep your mouth shut and let everything go the way it's supposed to go, nobody bothers you. But if you speak up and talk about things which most young people today in young America doesn't know anything about, that's the kind of stuff that can get you hurt. You can be thrown into prison for talking too much in America. So we like to talk about, we have freedom of speech, and we can say anything we want. Well, that's true. You do have freedom of speech. Like George Carlin says, you have freedoms in this country. You can, when you're buying ice cream, you can get chocolate or strawberry or vanilla. You got all kinds of choices. But in America, we like to brag about the fact that we can elect our leaders. But the problem is you cannot select your leaders. You can only elect, not select. And so, you know, this whole idea about mislabeling strikes a real strong chord with me because, boy, that's the truth. Nothing is labeled for what it actually is. And a classic example that's in your face is even in America we have supposedly two sides to our government, Democrat and Republican. But people who are young and don't know and inexperienced, you know, the old guys who have really studied this country we live in and in this system we live under, we've got it. We understand what's going on. But the young people today in America really don't see it. And a classic example, as I said, is, for instance, the Democratic Party as opposed to the Republican Party. The Democratic Party, if you go back to, there's a book you really need to get. It's still available. It's one of the most important books I ever came across in my life to explain the real darkness going on in not only America, but in the whole world, going back hundreds of years. The only really and classically intelligent book on this subject is called Fire in the Minds of Men. The author is James Billington, Billington, James Billington. And the book, again, is Fire in the Minds of Men. James Billington is today, as he has been for many years, I think still today, the chief librarian for the Library of Congress. So you don't get any more mainstream and highly placed than James Billington, chief librarian for the Library of Congress. Mm-hmm. And he wrote a book about the dark underbelly of lies, deception, about how the world of the earth today actually works. And it's a startling book. You can get it in any good bookstore or order it. It's on my website. Go to jordanmaxwellshow.com. And this is for anybody concerning books and materials. Go to jordanmaxwellshow.com and you will see a button that says recommended. Mm-hmm. I'm going to change that because most people don't know what that means. But it's people and books and videos and stuff that I highly recommend. So click on recommended and scroll down till you see Fire in the Minds of Men and order it off of my website. I've got all of it on my website. You can, and go to recommend. There's a lot of important stuff on there you need to get. But anyway, going back to James Billington and Fire in the Minds of Men talks about the Democratic Party. And of course he gets into the religions too, all the York Rite religions in America, the Jehovah's Witnesses and Seventh-day Adventists and Christadelphians and Worldwide Church of God and all of these, new quasi-Masonic orders that developed in the 1800s in America, based on the money and the politics, going back to England in 1700s. So people today joining organizations like Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormons and Seventh-day Adventists and Worldwide Church of God and all of these different cults and groups have no idea in the world where all of this is organized, directed, the money, the power groups in Europe who are behind these religious movements. It's an extraordinary story of betrayal. But going back to the Democratic Party, I'm amazed that people don't catch on. They don't catch on to what's right there in your face. All communist countries, going all the way back to the 45 and 50s when the Soviet Union was being founded, back in the 30s and 40s, when it was finally taking a hold in Russia after the 1914 war and the 1916 revolution, when Russia was now becoming known as the Soviet Union, the Center for World Communism. Incidentally, I don't know how many people know this. I'm sure almost nobody's ever heard this. But I remember many years ago, back in 1960, some 55 years ago, I remember reading in magazines and articles that the Federal Reserve was financing the Communist Party in Russia to overthrow the Tsar, but that it became very difficult for the Federal Reserve to send huge amounts of money to V.I. Lenin, Trotsky, Karl Marx, Lenin, to finance them, millions and millions of dollars to finance the Russian revolution and to bring about communism. The Federal Reserve was working to do that, but it became very difficult for the Federal Reserve and the big banks in America to transfer that kind of money out, because somebody is going to start asking, how come you're sending hundreds of millions of dollars to Trotsky and Marx and all these revolutionaries in Russia to overthrow the Russian government? What's going on here? Right. And so what they did is the article, I still have the article, you can find it on the web too, where it was talking about how the Federal Reserve sent to Russia, secretly sent to Russia, what am I trying to say? The word is the plates on which the $100s and $50 bills and $100 bills and $20 bills, the plates that you make the American money off of, they right. sent copies of the plates to the Soviet Union quietly and secretly, so that that their friends, the Federal Reserve's people in Russia who were bringing about the Russian Revolution, could make their own money out of the American dollar. They could print their own money, and they would send them the paper and the plates so that the Soviet Union could be built up, because they needed money. The communists, communism has never worked, and has never ever worked. And the only reason communism today works in China or in Cuba or in any other country still holding on to that antiquated system of what we call communism is because America is sending money to them, feeding them, giving them supplies, supplying them with armaments and guns and checks and money orders and big-time money. That's the only reason communism exists, is because America and England finance it.
Well, time and time again, all that I see, and maybe it's just me again, but I see a continuous pattern where the individuals who are involved in finance, what they do is they absolutely prop up and finance both sides of every single equation.
That's it.
There is, and it doesn't matter. It means it's completely irrespective of the ism. You know what I mean? It does not matter which ism it is. They are just there to support it because they support an enemy, which is then built up, and then after it's been decimated, destroyed, or humiliated in one way or another, deconstructed, they are well on their way to constructing yet another one and propping yet another one up. I mean, a couple of quick examples which are easily accessible by anybody who does a little bit of digging. I mean, a lot of people think that we were completely opposed to Nazi Germany as the American system was in during World War II. Well, truth is that American financiers, had it not been for them, the Third Reich would have never risen. They often credit, Fritz Tyson for having financed, Hitler's regime and the rise of the Third Reich. But the truth is that he didn't have enough money to even begin to finance what occurred there, the very fast rise and recovery of that entire economy, and all of the raw materials that were needed. Yeah, that might have been present, but there was a lot of development that was required. There was a huge amount of capital, and all of that was pumped in directly by a whole bunch of people whose roots could be traced back to this very country, over and over again, right? I mean, and we see it now. I say again, we see it now, and people are, argue with me about this quite a bit. But the truth is, all of these larger terrorist organizations that are wreaking havoc all over the planet, every last one of them seems to be financed by, well, excuse me, I don't want to use the word us, but those that are allegedly among us are supposedly financing all these things. It's not exactly clear, it's not right up front in broad daylight all the time, but they certainly finance both sides of the equation no matter what the conflict is. And that means at the end of the day, no matter who is destroyed, no matter whose population is decimated, guess what? They win. The house always wins. I mean, isn't that, I don't know. Tell me I'm crazy, Jordan, please.
No, you're right. I mean, look at it. And the reason why is very simple. Think about it. The reason why this is the case is because if you were to try and walk on a marble floor, say a big or some sort of a really smooth surface like a basketball court, and you put oil on the floor and rub oil all over the floor, and then have you try and walk across the floor on a very smooth surface which now has oil on it, you're not going to go anywhere. You're just going to slide and fall down. You're not going anywhere. So we've always understood that if you want to make progress, you have to have friction. There has to be friction to make so that you can move. The rubber on your shoes have to have a friction so that it can propel you forward. Because if you got nothing but oil and slick under you, you're not going anywhere. So without friction, nobody goes anywhere. So we got to have friction. You got to have teams. That's why you have baseball teams and football teams and wrestling matches. You've always got to have two sides. And now with the two sides fighting each other, now we can make money. Now comes the mob, the mafia, the La Cosa Nostra and the mafia families. Now comes the money making. We put this guy up against this other guy in Las Vegas as a heavyweight championship, and now there's some real money to be made. Now we're in business. Why? Because we've got friction between the two. So even fighters, and the big time fighters, they have to have a part of their whole operation is they have to have something called a fight promoter, somebody who has the brains and the financial backing by dark forces behind him that's got the big money, and they put together a big fight, a big heavyweight championship fight somewhere in Africa or somewhere in America. It's all underworld organized crime with the big money, creating the friction, and out of that friction, yeah, it cost them, millions and millions of dollars to set the fight up, but they're making hundreds of millions off of it. Mm-hmm. So it's just you need a fight promoter to promote the fight. And so, I mean, when you go back to movies like television shows, it was on TV many years ago, like what was the two side? What was it called? There's a comedy on television where there were two sides. It was a comedy, but what was it called? It was about Agent 99. You remember the name of that court?
Get Smart.
Get Smart. Mm-hmm. Exactly. I mean, when I was growing up in high school, when somebody said get smart, it meant wake up, stupid. Get smart. And so they make a television show called Get Smart. And in it, who are the two sides? The one side is chaos, and the other side is control. What does that tell you? Control against chaos. And so England actually had some sort of a organization in MI5 or MI6. Actually, in fact, in British intelligence, there was an organization called Chaos. Mm-hmm. And there is actually right now in the state of Virginia, a U.S. corporation, a company called control. And they control all world conflicts. That's what they say when you go on their website. It says it's called it's on my website, but they actually control the conflicts around the world. They will put money in where it's needed, or take money out where it's too much. Send in materials or take out materials. So they will actually control world events and control wars. That's on the web. The U.S. company, Control. And so it's in Virginia, like I said. So once you see how this works, how the government and how the U.S. works, and how the whole entire world of mankind actually, in fact, works, it will absolutely frighten you. It's excuse me.
Well, and it should. You know why? Here's the thing, and here's where it's going to sound like I'm disagreeing with you a little bit, but I think you'll understand. You'll understand me when I say what I do. I think it's almost unfair to call upon the images people have of La Cosa Nostra when it comes to the organized crime that we're really talking about here. Because the Italians that people have heard about, and the individuals who will fix fights, in a boxing ring and run some numbers and this kind of thing, that isn't even remotely, if it was baseball, that's like the A-League of criminal activity compared to the real show.
No, I totally agree with you. Totally agree. The real show is far, far bigger. I was only emphasizing the criminality of the whole entire world system.
Oh, exactly.
The stuff that's going on in the Middle East, somebody has to feed it and finance it and organize it and direct it. So they got fight promoters, and so the fights are going on, and all the time there are certain companies and corporations and people who are making a lot of money off of war, So anyway, that's enough.
Well, I got you, but just to kind of put another stamp on it, even if we take a look at one of the most popular things that's being discussed generally, a couple of things. First of all, the ISIS crisis, I always describe it as, because to me it's fully manufactured. There's nothing organic about it. The bottom line there is that, first of all, it's meant to evoke something very particular in an esoteric sense. There's a reason why it's called ISIS, not because it was a proper abbreviation of anything that would have been spoken in Arabic, Farsi, et cetera, et cetera. But on top of that, there were businesses that existed called ISIS before they started talking to us about this particular narrative. And all of it actually is quite synergistically makes a whole lot of sense. It's got nothing to do with an uprising of individuals that have, any legitimate or illegitimate beef, let's just say, with the Western world. That's all nonsense. The truth is that, once again, it is another surrogate meant to be out there, meant to be trained and raised up, very much like a prize fighter would be, to give opposition to the other big dog on the block. And I find it interesting you mentioned the Democratic Party, because, of course, this week everybody's making jokes about Hillary running around and barking. I don't know if you happen to notice any of that in the news, but the fact that she's barking, it's like, oh, this is very funny, this is very interesting. And my commentary on it is pretty simple. I thought that's what she was doing before anyway, so what's the difference?
Yeah. You're right. And to go along with that, even in the British stock market, you will find that Islam is a corporation soul. Most people have never heard that term. It's a corporation. Islam is a company. It's a corporation. It's called Corporation Soul, Islam. And so what we're talking about when you talk about Islam in the Middle East, you're talking about a corporation, a company. When that gets into the maritime admiralty stuff we were going to talk about too. The Catholic Church is a corporation. Probably one of the first corporations ever developed was the Catholic Church, and from that corporation gave birth to another corporation called the British Maritime Corporation, the British, what would call it, British government, which is a corporation, a company. And then when you find out the banks are all corporations, everything around the world is a corporation, period. As a matter of fact, you are a corporation. Now we get into the whole thing of maritime admiralty law. By law, you are, according to the law books, you personally, your flesh and blood self are a company, a corporation. And therefore all laws in America, and this is something probably nobody's heard, very few people who are really experts, they know it, but most people have never heard, that all laws in America, state, federal, county, corporate, it doesn't matter, any kind of law in America today does not apply to you as a human creature, as a human being. It does not apply to you. All laws in America, period, apply only to corporations, period. That's the law. Therefore, in order to have the laws govern you, they made you a corporation. So now you're under the law. No, but you weren't under the law because no law, according to international standards, no law applies to a human being. Obviously, because when you were born, your mother didn't even have control over you. Today, nobody, your wife, your husband, nobody has control over you. Only in your mind do you control yourself. So governments realize that. Nobody owns and controls you. So the way they decided to do it, because the kings in Europe wanted to control people, so they very cleverly knew they can't control people. But what they can do is set up a system so clever that nobody ever figured it out. It was really very clever. They set up a system by which only corporations were under laws. Well, because that's easy to do. I mean, I can't control you. I can't tell what you're thinking, what you're going to do. But if you set up a company, I can now look at your company anytime I want and figure out what you're doing and tell you what you can and can't do with your company. Can't do it with you. So there's always been a difference between you, the private you, who was born of a mother, and you in a courtroom representing a business. So that's why when I see you, I see you with a woman last night, and I say to you today, you know that girl you were with last night, she's bad company. A company? Yeah. And then you say, mind your own business. Business? Company? And then I find out you're going to get married and she's going to be your partner? What are you talking about here? Business? Company? Partner? We're talking business. It's nothing personal here. You want to get married? That's a corporation. She's a corporation by law, and you're a corporation by law. Therefore, if you want to get married, two corporations, General Motors and Ford Motor Company, want to pool their resources to become one company because they got some big projects they want to do. Well, that's fine. It's just called business. But it is business, therefore you need a business license. So therefore, if you're going to get married, there's one corporation getting ready to do business with another. It may be monkey business. It may be bad business, but that's your business, not my business. And so once you see how even marriage is a business, it's a partnership. You have partners. And if it doesn't work out, you're not going to God. You're going to the court. Bring your house and your money and your business, because that's all it ever was. That's all it ever was. When the man and the woman say they fall in love, why do they fall in love? Why can't you just walk into it? Huh?
Well, right. And even during a divorce procedure, which I unfortunately know something about, when they talk about, your children, or your house or anything else, they literally describe these things as products of the marriage.
That's exactly right. That's why you are a human resource. When you go looking for a job, you go to the human resource company to get a job, because that's all you are, is a product, a resource, like rubber and tire and iron and you. You're just a resource. And yet, yeah, you're human, but you're a human resource. And so once like I said, once you start breaking down these words and terms and you find out that everything is a business, all of it, religion is a business. That's why you have different churches are called denominations. That's what we call our money. 50s and 100s are denominations. Mm-hmm. And so the churches are a denomination, a particular denomination. One of them may be only worth $50, the other one worth $500. So churches are in denominations. Why? Because it's a business. And once you can start getting into religious terms and concepts of corporations in business, boy, and then in religion, that's a real hell of a story, man. That really opens up a can of worms that nobody wants to hear. That God is dog spelled backwards. Mm-hmm. And you begin to look at the word church, and where does that word church come from? And people going to church every day never for the moment ever realize where that word actually comes from and what it means. And so, like I said, so when you start breaking down the words and the terms, the idea that everything is a corporation, your church is a corporation, look up the word corporation soul, S-O-L-E, corporation soul. A corporation soul is a political standing in a world community. All churches are corporation souls. All important peoples, and the Henry Kissingers and the Queen Mum and Prince Charles and all these other scumbags are all registered internationally as corporation souls, which means that they are above the law. Go to a law dictionary and look up the word corporation soul, and you will see that this is a position that you can set up for yourself in America. And then it's called a corporation soul. I don't want to get into it. It's a big subject, but just go do some research on the web, and you'll find that a corporation soul is very, very powerful. It makes you very powerful in the political and economic and commercial system under which this earth operates. So but going back to because there's a point I wanted to make about the Democratic Party. Mm-hmm. In Fire in the Minds of Men is one good place. There are many places that talk about this. But the idea today is that communist countries, as I was starting to say before, the communist countries going back to the 30s, 40s, and 50s when the Soviet Union was growing up and coming into being, all of the communist countries that the international bankers were able to overthrow the different countries in Europe, Eastern Europe, etc., ultimately into China. The Federal Reserve and the international banking cartels in America were able to finance the overthrow of different countries and then they called those countries communist countries. Well, all of the communist countries were always referred to in law and publicly, in fact, as democratic republics. You had the People's Democratic Republic of China, the People's Democratic Republic of Cuba, the People's Democratic Republic of the Yukon, of Congo. People's Democratic Republic was a term officially used for a communist regime.
Right, and we're going
Democratic.
Right, People's Democratic, and we're going to break this down a little more and actually touch upon maritime law and all of these interesting concepts and how this actually affects you directly as an individual as we go further. My special guest tonight, Jordan Maxwell on the Ochelli Effect. Stay tuned to American Freedom Radio. We'll be right back.
Most underrated voice in all media. The Alternative's alternative. Chuck Ochelli.
The second hour of the Ochelli Effect begins here on American Freedom Radio at AmericanFreedomRadio.com. My special guest tonight, Jordan Maxwell, which, by the way, I want to make this point extremely clear. Go to Jordan Maxwell's show jordanmaxwell.com. Why do I stress the show? Do not go to jordanmaxwell.com. It is a hijacked website. It is not to Mr. Maxwell's benefit, and it is not under his control. So that's that. You need to go to jordanmaxwellshow.com to get in touch with Mr. Maxwell directly, to actually be able to get the materials from him that you would be in search of if you're going to a website, jordanmaxwellshow.com. As we were going to the break in the first hour, we started talking about this concept of communism. We started talking about how it's often described as the People's Republic of China, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Insert whatever nation, state name they give it. It doesn't matter. They talk about these things being the People's Republic, the People's Democratic Republic of insert name here. And that is a true thing. And, you know, we mentioned maritime law, and a couple of people started to get to me in the chat room already, wanting to hear about that concept and already starting to discuss it. I'm going to give you guys a chance toward the end of this hour to call in if you like. 218-339-8525. We'll try and get to you after we have a bit more discussion on this topic, because there is so much to really cover here. Who knows what we will get to. But if you get a chance to call in, 218-339-8525, we'll try and join you into the conversation and let you ask Mr. Maxwell or myself the question directly. Likely you'll be talking to Jordan because, hey, you can call me just about any time, but it is always good to be able to reach out and actually directly address somebody like Mr. Maxwell. So, as I was saying in the chat room, they already brought up this interesting concept, and I do want you to finish your thought about the People's Republic of and Communist Nation inserted here. But in the chat room, somebody started talking about the way that people wind up under maritime law because this is the exact phrase they used, because we sailed into life through the birth canal, maybe. That was the interesting comment which was made in the chat room that I thought would be quite relevant to what we're about to get into. But let me allow you to finish off your thought that you were kind of rudely cut off on regarding the People's Republic of insert communist nation name here as it goes, and then we'll get into this concept of the Admiralty maritime law and all of that. So go ahead, Mr. Maxwell.
What I was saying is that when you hear the word democratic, just figure Soviet communism. All right, let's move on. That's the name of the tune. The word democratic means communism. Marxist-Leninist Soviet communism is referred to as democratic. Now, this is why it comes from the word democratic, comes from the word demos in Greek. A demos is a crowd, a large crowd in the streets. And so during riots in the countries around the world, you will see large crowds of people burning buildings and etc. And we say that it's a demonstration. So there were demonstrations in Cairo, and there was guns and bullets and people being killed. So we refer to it as a demonstration. It was a democratic thing that was happening. The people were speaking. So it's a democratic communism, socialism, period. So anytime you hear in America a Democrat, just remember Soviet communism, period. That's what the word means, a demonstration. So a mob rule, when the mob's in the street and it's unruly, it's called a demonstration because they're democratically speaking. So that's what we have today in America, is a democracy where people are, all kinds of screwy stuff is going on, all kinds of lies and tricks and deception and mislabeling and breaking the law and it's just a mess. Why? Because that's what a mess is. It's out there on the streets when people are rioting. There is no law. There is no appreciation for justice and liberty and honor and decency. No, it's a riot. And that's what we've got going on in America today. There is no law in America, period. It's only what the most powerful people can say the law is. And whatever they say the law is, if they're overthrown the next day by somebody even more powerful, then the law changes. So there is no actual written, chiseled in stone law in America. It's a war between the gangs, between the powerful gangs, the powerful money, deciding what your law is going to be. So there is no law. Even the Bible talks about this time as being the time of man of lawlessness. Lawlessness. In other words, there is no law. There's only what the powerful people say it is. And if they decide something different tomorrow, then that's what the law is.
Right.
Nobody goes back to a constitution, looks at the Bill of Rights. Nobody goes back to the founding documents of our country. There is no founding documents, period. It's only what I say it is. And so whatever Obama says it is, that's what it is. Period.
Well, right, and that's why it's
jail.
Right, and that's why it's perfectly logical that the most criminally depraved among us actually are the only ones that ascend to great power. It's quite logical, considering.
Yeah, let's get back to the Maritime Admiralty, because we got about 8 hours of stuff to talk about in a few minutes.
Well, we're going to give it a shot, yeah.
Yeah, we'll do the best we can. In the ancient Roman days, in the ancient Rome, they have a list called maxims of law. They were usually one sentence or two sentences at the most, which basically told you how the law works. And they were called maxims of law, and all attorneys and lawyers know what I'm talking about. Number 29 on the list of maxims of law in the ancient Roman Empire said it this way, quote, "Let him that wishes to be deceived, end quote. So it's actually a part of Roman law that if you're so stupid that you want to buy into something and get deceived, go ahead. You're free. Go on, believe anything you want. Put out your money and support anything you want. If you get deceived, that's your problem, not mine. I didn't ask you to believe that." So that's the way Rome looked at the law. If you are foolish enough, ignorant, ill-informed, and unread enough to be deceived, then go ahead. Be my guest. We don't care. Because you're going to get deceived anyway. So if you're so stupid, then just go on and believe anything you want. And when you find out, when you get to be 80 years old, you look back on it and find out that your whole life was a deception and other people were laughing at you and deceiving you for their own purposes, that's your problem, not mine. So when you get into maritime admiralty law, first of all, I don't have the quote, but basically the law goes back to the 1600s, back into Europe, and it's called maritime admiralty. And that's what we live under today in America. We live under it around the world, but I'm only concerned about my own country right now. So what this means, maritime admiralty law simply means, and any good maritime attorney, and go on the web, if you want to really do some research on this, just go on the web to YouTube and type in the words, U.S. is a corporation. Simple. Just go on the web to YouTube and type in U.S. is a corporation, period. And listen to all of the hundreds of lectures by brilliant people who have done research on maritime admiralty, how it works, what the words mean, etc. It's all on the web under U.S. is a corporation. But the basic idea is that everything, all business, all commerce, all endeavor of the human race is based on water. And why? Well, because you were born out of your mother's water. When her water broke, you came out to life. So therefore, you were conceived and born and designed underwater. And then when you came out to life, you came out of the water. This is why Christians have a baptism. You get baptized because you want to be born again. And so if you want to be born again, well, how were you born the first time? Well, you came out of your mother's womb and her water broke. Well, that's what you've got to do to be reborn. Go back into Mother Nature, Mother Earth, your mother, and go back into her water. And then when you go back into her water, you submerge yourself like you were before you were born, and then you come up out of your mother's water, Mother Nature, Mother Earth, and now you are born again. And so Christians make a big to-do about this being a holy. It's just symbolism of being born again out of your mother's water. And when you begin to look at how all of this works, well, water is the basis for all business, all commerce, all human endeavor, period. And this is why we have sayings. We say things like, money goes through your hands like water. No, money actually is water. It's called Maritime Admiralty Commerce. International monetary commerce is water.
Money is also described as liquidity, depending on how fast or easily you can move it. The other concept is, and here's something that's just a strange thought to me, that one of the main components of the human body is water.
That's right.
You know? So, therefore, the rules that govern water, I guess, in a strange way, could also, it would make sense that it would govern the human beings and their activities and interactions as well. Sorry to interrupt, but it was just something that I had in my mind there to throw into it. They also talk about when they freeze a bank account, it becomes frozen, much like water would become frozen, and then you can't pour the liquid or move the liquidity around. You could take this all different ways all day, but it's evident right there in the terms. That's all I'm saying.
Of course. You have liquid assets. It's liquidity. And look at all the words that relate to water. I have a few here. People say you are awash in debt. In court, you are in hot water. And somebody needs to bail you out. And so if they can't bail you out, since you are a biological battery, which is what you are, you're a biological electrical unit battery with a computer called a brain. And so if you can't get bailed out because you're in hot water, then they will put you into a cell. That's what a battery is. We call it a cell. And so we say that you are flooded with bailout money. A bank account has dried up. You have an offshore account, or you're drowning in debt. If you're in business, you need to run a tight ship. And we don't want you making waves or rocking the boat. And let's see, are you on board? You know how they say, okay, mate, are you on board, mate? You are laundering money. And where do you do that? In the mainstream. We have shipping departments. The banks will levy your account. We say one day your ship will come in. And then once you begin to understand the ship, that's the next step. All right. Now we know that money is water. Everything is liquid. We say that, the whole world system is liquid. You don't know where it's going to spill over somewhere.
And one of the problematic systems of control is often damned. Yep. Excuse me. Sorry. Had to throw that in there. Go ahead.
So, here's the way it works. First of all, by law, all ships are female. This is by international law. It's agreed upon. All ships, a rocket ship, sailing ship, any kind of a ship is female. That's why always in any ship you will have a captain. The captain runs the ship, and the ship is female. That goes back to the old ancient ideas in Christianity that the man is the head of the woman, the man is the head of the family, so he's the captain, which goes back to our word capital, which is money. So the capital, money, is head of the ship. And so when the two get married, they have to have a license because it's a business. And my God, there's so much I want to bring out on this, because when you get married, you're going to have a product. And so I've got so many things in my head. Let me just go back through what I normally talk about. So the idea being is that anything in business is water. So when a ship pulls into a harbor, we say that where the ship, as I said, is a female. Any kind of a ship is female. She comes in, and when she comes in, she parks at the dock. And so we say that she is in her berth. The area of the dock is called a berth, B-E-R-T-H. So if you're going to go on a trip with a ship, you got to find out what berth she's in. And so when the ship pulls into a harbor, she pulls into a harbor and say she has $800 million worth of Toyotas or televisions or whatever she is bringing in. Each one of those items that comes off of her has to have its own certificate of manifest. It has to have its own paperwork. Mm-hmm. And so it's called a certificate of manifest or a birth certificate. And so when you are born, you came out of your mother's water, you needed a birth certificate. And it's got to be signed by the dock because that's where it's sitting in her birth, is at the dock. So the concept is that you are a maritime admiralty product. And each one of those products, as I said, has to have its own certificate telling us how much does it weigh, what color is it, does it have air conditioning, 4 doors, what is it? Same thing when you were born. You know, what color is he? What nationality? How much does he weigh? Does he have 2 hands or 1? And so it's a vital statistics for a corporation. So you have to have a birth certificate. So on your birth certificate, incidentally, on the bottom left of the birth certificate, all original birth certificates are on bank paper. They are referred to as banking law. And so on the bottom of your birth certificate, on the left-hand bottom, it will say that this is on banking paper. And where your mother or father signs, it says they are, informers. And so the whole idea is that you are born into this system out of water. You came off of your mother's ship. Your mother was the ship. This is why the male always manufactures, while the female is in labor, producing the product. So he manufactured and she was delivering the product in the delivery room. And so, because it all has to do with ships. So one day a ship will come in, you know, government is called statesmanship or the ship of state. And so we say come aboard, and this is why you are on a citizenship or a scholarship or a sportsmanship or a courtship or hardship and heirship and friendship and partnership, companionship. My God, it goes on forever. Leadership, membership, dealerships. And at a dealership, if you want to buy a lot of cars, you can get a fleet price. So, you know, and the very word ship in all these terms goes back to also in religion. You have something called worthship. So worthship comes from 2 words, worth, W-O-R-T-H, worth, the value of something. So the worth of something, and if you're putting a lot of value on something, then you are participating in what we call worthship. So if you really put a lot of, whatever it is that you're constantly concerned with, that's your worthship. That's what you consider to be important. And of course, all of it, as I said, we have to do with the seas, and the sea, and the word sea goes back to the ancient world. The word mer, N-E-R, mer is a sea, like the mermaid. And so mer is a sea, and people have always said and talked about, and songs have been written about the fact that the sea is very enchanting. You can sit out on the ocean, on the beach and watch the waves come in. It's very enchanting. It's intoxicating to just sit and watch the waves. And so they say the sea was enchanting. from which we get the word merchant. Merchant is the sea enchanting you, and this is why you have a bank note, like a song note. The bank note is enchanting. So we're talking about business, money, water, a merchant. And so, and like I said, there's hours and hours of this kind of thing. If I had my notes in front of me, we could talk for 4 hours just on words and terms that imply all business on the earth is water. You came out of your mother's water. You came down the birth canal. You are a maritime admiralty product. And incidentally, by law, humans today, by law, are referred to in law books as chattel, C-H-A-T-T-E-L. Go to a law book, get a law book, and look up the word chattel, C-H-A-T-T-E-L, chattel. Chattel in law books is movable property and goods. Why? Because you are chattel. You move around, don't you? Yeah, well, somebody owns you. It's a maritime admiralty water product, and someone owns you. You're in hot water. You need to get bailed out and all that kind of thing. And when you walk into a court, when they call your name, you get up and you walk through and put your hand on the gate, and you walk through the gate. Well, why is there a gate in a courtroom? A bunch of people sitting on this side of the gate is called civil law. It has to do with the word civilly, or the people. The people, civil law. So civil law is the people's law. That's why the people are sitting out here. But when you're called, you walk up to the gate and put your hand on the gate to open, and you open the gate and walk in. When you did that, that gate is a water gate. Remember the Nixon days? It's a water gate. So what you're doing is you have yourself opened yourself up to maritime admiralty water. So now you're in hot water. Someone has to bail you out. And like I said, you are a biological battery full of water, and so you're almost 80% water. And you've got a brain, which is a computer, and your biological battery, so they're going to put you in a cell. The whole idea of government, operation, education, commerce, religion, everything is based on water, the cash flow. So once you see that, then you begin to see how water seeps in everywhere. You have offshore accounts, like I said. That's the way our world really works. It's just a business. This is why if you're going to be a lawyer, you have to get a license. Why? Because if I write a story, and you take that story behind my back and make a movie on that story, you can't do that. Why? Because I own the story. I wrote it. You didn't, and so I own it. Therefore, if you want to use my story, we could possibly talk about that, but you're going to have to get a license from me, pay me up front to use my story, because it's mine. So therefore, if you're going to be a lawyer, you've got to be involving yourself in a business, making money. And on what basis are you making money? Well, you're making money on your study of law books. You've studied the law books, and so now you can go into court and make money representing your client. But somebody has to pay the people who wrote the law book, because you're making money off of the law book. You didn't write that book. Somebody else wrote it. So therefore, you have to make payments. You have to pay to use the law books to make money. This is why you have to have a license. And so once you get a license, now you can use the law books to make money. So the whole idea of churches being denominations, like Star Trek, a classic example in Hollywood, Star Trek, taking mankind where he's never been before. Well, that's exactly what the church has done. It's taken the human race where it's never been before. This is why, the whole idea of Star Trek is Captain Kirk. Well, go and look in the dictionary. K-E-R-K or K-I-R-K. Kirk is a church in Scotland. Captain Kirk taking mankind where he's never been before. That's right. They've been taking people for a long time. Now they're taking you to territory you've never been in before. The church is mutating into maritime admiralty corporation laws. And that's why I said that the different religions of the world, from Christianity, Muslims, Judaism, all are corporations. That's why if you're going to be a preacher or a rabbi or a great teacher or a priest, you have to get a license from the state. The state has to give you a license to be a preacher in a church. You don't just get up, because the Lord told me to say something and I get up on a platform and start talking. You go to jail for that. You get a license from Caesar. It's a corporation. It's a company. You're making money. People are giving you money when you're in church. We call that business. So if you're making money and people are giving you money, that's a business. You better get a license. So it's called a ministerial license. Hasn't got anything to do with God. We're talking business here, money, the cash flow. So that's why when I say so many Christians and Jews and Muslims all over the world are praying to God for peace and prosperity and for protection and all that. And the more people pray, the worse things get. The deeper in debt you go, the richer get rich, while the poor get poor. The world seems to be going down a toilet bowl. It's being flushed down. Civilization's being destroyed. We've lost our jobs. We've lost our economy. We've lost our home. We've lost our freedoms. And the only thing now left to lose is your brain, your head. So people are losing their mind now. They're killing people on the street. They're murdering their own families. There's wars between the different races. All of this is all being orchestrated by the water. Somebody very cleverly, thousands of years ago, maritime admiralty was dreamt up in the ancient kingdoms of Phoenicia, Canaan, the Canaanites, and from the Canaanites came the whole modern day world, because remember, thousands of years ago in the Middle East, the Canaanites, where we today call Israel, they were called Canaanites. And they roamed around the Mediterranean doing business. So they set up what they call the Knights Templars, or the international business, international banking cartel. And incidentally, where do we even get the word bank? We get the word bank from a river bank. What does a river bank do? It directs the flow of the currency. Because your money is referred to as currency. It's an ebb and flow of a current. Comes in and goes out. Comes in and goes out, just like the tide. So when you get into all of this, remember the moon pulls the seas of the world. The oceans of the world are pulled by the moon. And Judaism is a moon religion based on the moon worship. So is Muslims. Muslims are also moon worshipers. Now you get into the religion of water and maritime admiralty religions. That's a real incredible subject, and incidentally, that's my favorite subject, because that's the only one I feel safe about talking about, because that's the one I've studied all my life. When you get into religion, and where these religions have come from and how they're connected to maritime admiralty going back some 3,000 to 5,000 years to the Babylonian, Sumerian, and Phoenician, Canaanite superstructures of government and religion, it's one incredible story. But the bottom line is, no matter how much you pray, you're praying to a false God. You're praying to something that don't exist. So you're talking to God. This is why God is not answering anybody. The more we pray, the worse things get. Why? Because we're looking in the wrong direction. We're praying to a make-believe creature that doesn't exist. It's a maritime admiralty concept, God. So,
right. I always find it fascinating, though, that the word lunatic is also, because think about it. If these the two religions you mentioned that are quite based on the moon, I often think to myself that it's not a bad thing to utilize the word lunatic, because after all, it comes from actually being influenced by that which is lunar, which is the moon. And we do know that the moon influences the tides, and right back to the water we are again, Jordan. Yes.
Right. Exactly right. It's all based on the water. It's all based on words and terms and symbols, and all of this is occult or hidden. The word occult simply means hidden, not evil or bad, hidden. And so the doctors will even tell you there's certain organs in your body which are hidden. And so we call them occult. So the word occult simply means hidden, and that's what everything in life is all about. It's all hidden. If you don't understand how the world works, and I've used this word before, and I think it bears repeating. I've said before, if you have a 2-story building and you're going to put a lot of weight on the second floor, now, before you begin putting printing presses or automobiles or heavy equipment on a second floor, go downstairs with a building inspector, remove the tiles from the first floor ceiling, and look at the foundation you're going to put all that weight on to see if the foundation is going to hold that kind of weight. So what you're doing is you're standing under the foundation you're going to build on. And this is where we get our word understanding, because you're standing under the foundation to get understanding. And if you're going to ship a box across country, you could go out in the garage and get a rope and tie up the box and take it and mail it, and that'll be sufficient. But if you're going to take that rope and hang it off of a 10-story building and you're going to hang on it, then you have better, first of all, check the integrity of that rope to see if it's going to hold that kind of weight. So that's what you should do when you're looking at religions and governments and law and banking and all the rest of these institutions of man. You better do some understanding. You better check the rope before you go hanging on it. You better do something called educate yourself. Open your mind, go to a library, and do something you've never done before. Read a book. Try and do some research on what the words mean.
Make sure that these things hold water.
Yeah, make sure it's going to hold water when you... That's right. And so, I mean, attorneys will tell you, read the fine print, you know, and what do you mean the fine print? Well, sign on the dotted line. Take a check. I don't care what check. Look at a check. If you got a checkbook, look at the check in your checkbook. And where you sign on the bottom, you're signing on the dotted line. Look at the dots. You'll see it's a dotted line. It's not solid. Take a magnifying glass and look at the dotted line, and it's not dots. It's telling you something. It's very small. It's the tiny, you know, that's what the lawyer will tell you. Read the fine print. The fine print is on your check. Read it. Get a magnifying glass and look on your check where you sign and read what it says, because you're now signing on the dotted line. No, it's not dots. It's saying something. And you are agreeing to what it says by putting your signature on it. It's an incredible world of betrayals and ignorance and ill-informed stupidity. People just do not understand how the world works. And that's why I started off saying a couple of hours ago, that's why I started saying that knowledge is power. And unless you have the knowledge on how the world actually, in fact, works, then you're going nowhere. You're going to have nothing but trouble. You're going to end up in jail or in court, losing money or losing your life or losing your freedom or losing something. Why? Because you don't know what you're doing. When you walk into a Las Vegas hotel and you have no idea in the world how the game is being played, they're going to take you for a ride real quick.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I'm saying. You know, look up the word Congress. You know, like I told you, the word church. That's a hell of a word, church, where it comes from. Maybe we can get to that in a minute. But look up the word Congress and Senate. The word Senate goes back to a Roman word for an actor on a stage. Someone who's acting out on a stage in ancient Rome It's called a senator. And the word Congress, we like to talk about, the powers of Congress. Look up the word Congress. The first definition in a law dictionary, from my law dictionary I'm looking at now, the definition for Congress is an act of sexual procreation between a man and a woman. Sexual knowledge. It's called sexual knowledge. Sexual intercourse. Sexual relations. The word Congress means sex. In a law dictionary. Well, it's just amazing because I hear people saying, well, the Congress is just screwing the American people. That's what it means. In Latin, Congress means sexual relationship.
Yes,
why? Because it took sexual relationship to create, as I said, the male manufactures and the female is in labor. So the control over the product is Congress. Sexual Congress. We're talking about water. We're talking about fluids. It's a very deep subject, and I mean I could talk for hours on this, but I don't like talking about this kind of thing because I feel that so many people hear me as entertainment. I'm not here to entertain anyone. I'm here as a teacher, and because of that, there are important people and then just plain old street criminals who don't want this kind of knowledge given to the people. It's very dangerous to tell people what's really going on and how this country really works. And so there are criminals everywhere that want this kind of knowledge kept out of the people's view. It's on a need-to-know basis, and you don't need to know. This is why they give you games. They give you a ball. Dogs and cats loves to play with a ball. So do elephants and gorillas and all the other animals at a zoo. They throw in a ball and the gorillas will bounce the ball and throw it at each other. Monkeys love to play with a ball, especially cats and dogs love to play with a ball. So that's what our masters who have conceived all these dark systems of control realize that we are nothing more than animals. And so we like to eat. We like to be entertained. A dog, you give a dog a bone and then also give him a ball so he can play with it. And so today we have all kinds of games based on a ball. Baseball, football, tennis ball, ping pong ball, soccer ball, football. We've got all kinds of ball games. And so, we want you to be a team player. And so the whole idea is just watch your ball games, drink your beer, and shut up. Do what we tell you to do because we own you when you were born. And as a matter of fact, when you're born in a hospital, they will take the baby's foot and take a footprint on paper of the baby's foot because they now, according to the law, they now own your soul. Because your bottom of your foot is called your soul. They just took a copy of your baby's foot. Now they own your soul. Get it? And so from that day forward, they own you. You are a maritime admiralty product, and you are nothing more than a human resource. And the government of the corporation called United States owns you, period. This is why they can come into your house, arrest you, beat you at clubs and do anything they want to you because you don't own nothing. Let me explain to you something that maybe you haven't heard or thought about. You do not, as an American, as a U.S. citizen, you in fact do not own anything, period. You don't own your home. You don't own your car. You don't own your children. You don't own nothing, period, by law. Let me give you an example. If you were a painter and I have a room I want you to paint, you come to me, excuse me.
Oh, no problem. Take your time. Yeah, absolutely. This has always fascinated me, though, the concept of ownership, because people talk about personal property, and I've always found the concept really strange because it seems in a realistic sense, no one actually owns anything.
Anything, period. Let me show you why. Suppose you're a painting contractor, and I want my house painted. I want my room painted. So I call you, and now we're talking business. You're a painting contractor, and I want something done. So you come to me, and you give me an estimate of what it's going to cost me. If I agree to it, we have a contract. And so this is why you have something called British. And that's another term we'll get into. British comes from the word beret. Beret in Hebrew is a contract, and ish is man. So therefore the beret-ish becomes British, the men of the contract. That's why in Western civilization, maritime admiralty law rules Western civilization. So everything you do must have a contract.
Right.
Now, you are a painter, and I've hired you to paint my room. You give me a bill, say you are estimating $100, okay? And I accept. Now, when you're through with the job, the way commerce works is you come to me and present me with the bill. And the bill is for $100. I owe you $100. I reach in my pocket, and I pull out my wallet, and I give you a $100 bill, and you're happy. I just paid you. No, I didn't pay you anything. You gave me a bill for $100. I gave you a $100 bill. If you had given me a bill for $20, I'd give you a $20 bill. So I haven't paid you anything. Reason why is because in law, any lawyer who knows what I'm talking about will tell you that in America, you cannot pay a bill. It's not, you can't do it. It's not possible. You cannot pay a bill. I know we say that I've got this bill to pay and that bill to pay, but officially in a court, you cannot pay a bill. You can discharge a debt, but you cannot pay a bill. Because the way you pay the bill, supposedly, is you give me a bill for $100, I'll give you a $100 bill. You give me a bill for $10, I'll give you a $10 bill. So all I'm doing is discharging the debt. Okay, I owe you $100. I just gave you a bill. You owe me $100. I give you a $100 bill, so you owe me $100. Therefore, we're even.
I've always wondered who's gonna pay all those bills.
Yeah,
but,
well,
yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
So eventually, people start to wake up and find out this is why you don't own your car. You know, according to law, according to the maritime law, any automobile, anything that has wheels on it, that's a whole story too about wheels and locomotion, etc. But anything that has wheels, motorcycle, cars, trucks, fire trucks, I don't care what it is, buses, it doesn't matter. If it has wheels and rolls around, then it's under maritime law. And how do we know that? Well, the law books will tell you that any time the government owns something, any vehicle from a motorcycle to a truck, if any vehicle that the government owns, and of course they own everything because you never bought nothing, so anything the government owns, the law says they must have on that vehicle, the government must have on their vehicles the words for official use only. This is why when you'll see a police car, look at it and you'll see a small print under the word police or around the car somewhere. It will say, and usually on the back hood or something on the back, it will say for official use only. That means that the government owns it, and therefore this vehicle is a government use. And so the police department, fire department, any other department, their vehicles are owned by the government, so it's for official use only. Well, they own you, and they own your car. And so once a year, you pay a lease for the year. You pay a lease to lease your car from the government because they own it. You don't. So you have to pay a lease price to lease it for a year. And they will send you a little tag, and you peel off the tag and stick it on your license, which means that you have leased the car, and you're lawfully leasing the car, and it's yours for the year. But on that little tag you peel off, you don't look at it. Look at the little tag you're peeling off, and it says for official use only. So now you have put onto your car for official use only, and you're the one that paid for it. Cost you $150 to get the little tag to put it on there. Why? Because that's what they're charging you as a lease price. You're leasing the car for a year from the government. So you don't own your children. You don't own your home. You don't own your land. You don't own anything, period. Period. You don't own nothing. And if you think you do, you get out of line and watch how quick the government will send in the police to arrest you, to arrest your children, to take your children from you and put them in a home somewhere. They can do whatever they want to you anytime they please to do it because they own you. You don't own nothing. Period. So that's the way it works. That's the name of the tune. And that's the country we live in, and that's the way it works. So we could talk for hours about symbolism and why the emblems on the back of the dollar bill and what the word church means. I mean, I could go into that real quick. The word church.
Yeah, I do want to get into that because the word church has been represented to mean a whole lot of different things.
Yeah.
I find it fascinating that it relates to the word circus. I find it interesting that it relates to another concept which has nothing to do with a building, by the way. It actually has to do with a gathering. And it's a very confusing term, a very seemingly simplistic word like church is actually really a confusing term. Yeah, if you wouldn't mind breaking that down, I think that would be great.
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, you've got to understand that God, as far back in the ancient world as we can go, has always been understood to be 3 and 1. It's nothing new with the Catholic Church, that God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Ghost. That's nothing new. The Hindus, 5,000 years ago, had Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva. The Egyptians had Osiris, Isis, Horus. The Jews have Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. The whole idea of God has always been understood to be a triune 3. This is why you have the 3 major religions. You don't have 4 major religions. You have 3. Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. There's a reason why there's only 3. It's Father, Son, Holy Ghost. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. It's always been 3, a triune God. Why? Because it's based on the idea that when the sun comes up in the morning, it's newborn. It wasn't here hours ago, but this morning as it came up, it's newborn. It's born again. Then as it rises, it walks across the sky. The Egyptians said that the sun walks across the sky in 12 steps. And so it does. It walks across the sky in 12 steps. So the 12-step program, today we have alcoholics with the 12-step program. Schools in America are a 12-step program. You go from the 1st grade to the 12th grade. So it's a 12-step program. Why? Because the sun, according to the ancient Egyptians, walked across the sky in 12 steps. And each step was called a Horus. Horus. Horus was the sun god. And so when it came up in the morning, it's Horus of the 1st step. A little bit later, it's Horus of the 2nd step. A little bit later, Horus of the 3rd step. And when it gets to be the 6th step, it's high noon. This is why we call it high noon. And so the Egyptians call the sun at noon the most high. Why? Because it don't get any higher than noon. So therefore, he begins to walk across the sky going down now. So it's after noon. And so he's walking 6 more steps, and at 6 o'clock, he's gone. And so he walked across the sky in 12 steps, a 12-step program. Right. And this is why Indiana Jones and and George Lucas with Star Wars and in Star Wars you've got Luke. Luke is a name of a boy's name, which is based on a Latin word Lucius. Lucius in Latin means light, or Lucifer. Lucifer as the god of light, or Lucius, light, or Luke. So Luke means light. So you have Luke Skywalker, and he's walking across the sky in 12 steps to meet his evil brother, his evil father, his evil brother. And in the ancient Egyptian, the evil one, there was the good son and the bad one. And the evil one was the prince of darkness. So we say that the devil, which is simply putting the letter D, as in David, take the letter D and put it in front of the word evil. It becomes devil. And so Luke Skywalker walks across the sky in 12 steps to meet his evil twin, his evil compatriot, who is Darth Vader, the Prince of Darkness. And so all of these ideas have been in mythology for thousands of years, but we put them into movies, into music, into songs, and into religions, and the people still buying it. They have no idea in the world where all of this stuff comes from. But the word church comes from when the Crusaders, back in the 13th century, when the Crusaders, who were the Knights Templars, who became known today as the international bankers, but back in the 12th, 13th century, they were called Crusaders. And when they went into the Middle East to kick out the Islamic world out of Jerusalem, they learned a lot. Like any military groups do, when they go to a different country, you learn the eating habits, you learn the words, the curse words, how the people live in that country. And so you bring that back to America. You bring back what you learned in Germany, what you learned in Russia. And so that's what happened when the Crusaders came back to Rome. They brought with them some new ideas that they had picked up from the Arab population. And one of them was the worship of a goddess named Circe. The goddess Circe was an Arabic goddess. And so Circe, actually, the Arabs got it from the Greeks. Even the more ancient Greeks had Mother Circe, and of course the Arabs picked it up. Phoenician peoples picked it up. The Grecian god Circe, goddess Circe. And so Circe was a goddess, and according to the old Greek mythology, Circe was able to hypnotize people. She would put them under a spell and then invite them into her house. Once they walked into the house, she would shut the door behind them and lock them in so they couldn't get out. And then, according to Greek mythology, Mother Circe, Mother Kirk, Mother Church, Mother Circe would then feed upon her victims. She is now feeding upon them. She would eat them. They would support her, and so that's